we're going to simplify this right here. Now, in order to simplify, you need the bases to be the same. So 2 can't break down, but do you understand that 16 is 2 to the 4th? So let's actually write this as 2 to the 2/3 times 2 to the 4th to the 1/3. Okay, so we change 16 as 2 to the 4th. Now the bases are the same, and then when you when you take a power to a power, hopefully you realize you're going to multiply here. So you're going to multiply the powers. So what I'm going to end up with is 2, again, to the 2/3, write that over again, but this is going to be 2 to the 4/3, because 4 times 1/3 is 4/3. Now, since the bases are the same, the properties say you can add the powers. So if you add those powers, 2/3 plus 4/3, you get 6/3, and 6/3, hopefully you realize, is 2. And what is 2 squared? 4. So all that is simply 4. Reduce, make sure the key is that you want to get the bases the same, and so we had to change that to make that happen, and then you add the powers. There we go. Now this one, what we're asking here is to change it to a radical notation. Fractional powers can be rewritten into radical notation. So radical notation, you have the x, and the denominator is your root. Your roots are under the ground, under the fraction. So the 7 is your root, so that 7 is going to go there, and the 3 is what goes inside. I'm done. Now be careful, if this fraction could reduce before you rewrite it in radical notation. But that's all I wanted to do, is practice making a fractional power into a radical. So let's make this into a fractional power. So first of all, you have to realize there's a 2. It's called a square root for a reason. Square root would have a 2 there, because a 2 root. Now, to make it a fractional power, we have 6x to the 4th. And what would the fractional power be? Well, the 2 is going to be the denominator, and since the inside is not all to 1 power, it's simply going to be 1. So 6x to the 4th all to the 1/2 power. That's writing it as a fractional power. It's called a rational power ratio. Now, that could be simplified. We're just going to let it be. All we're going to do is convert right now. We're not going to go too deep. Let's look at the next one. Let's change this to a fractional power. So, to change it to a fractional power, we have 6x. And what do we have? Well, we know the fraction, the denominator is a 3, and that 2 it's all to the squared, so it just is a 2 there. So it's a 2/3 power. The difference between these two problems is that 4th was only to the x. Here, both pieces are squared. So we take the whole thing to that root and that numerator. Where here, this whole thing was not to a power, so it's a 1. So these are the two problems here. Be careful with the difference between these two. They can be a little confusing. And all we're doing is writing this as a fractional power, writing this as a fractional power. Yes, we will learn how to simplify these. These do simplify, and we will get to that at some point. But for now, we're just learning how to convert back and forth. Here we're getting to a radical. Here we're going from a radical to a rational power, or a fractional power. Okay, this problem right here, we are going to just simplify this. So here we go. What we're going to do first is take this negative third power to both pieces. So I will have x to the 2/5 to the negative third times y to the negative 1/3 to the negative third. Now again, when you multiply powers, a power to a power, you're going to multiply them. So when you multiply 2/5 times negative 3, you get negative 6/5 times, when you multiply negative 1/3 times negative 3, you are going to get positive 1. Alright, so that works. Now the next thing we're going to do is deal with negative powers. What do negative powers do? Well, you have to remember, hopefully, that a negative power will give us something different. So, watch what happens. A negative power goes to the bottom. So I have y to the first, and so x to the 6/5 will go to the bottom. Negative powers drop down, and the first you don't need to put, so that would be your final answer right there. So let us simplify this. Now before we take this power to each piece inside, can't you simplify this inside first? See how they're both x's? So let's simplify this. What we're going to do is when you divide, you subtract powers. So that would be the 2/3 times 4/3. So it's x to the 2/3 minus 4/3. Let's subtract those. And hopefully you can see that as being x to the 2 minus 4 is negative 2/3. Alright, so there we go. We subtract the insides. But we still have that to the 3/2 power. So don't forget about that. This is the inside simplified. We still have that power. Now we're taking this to that power, so we multiply these. And negative 3/2 times 3/2, hopefully you can tell that would be x to the negative first. And anything to a negative power drops to the bottom. And we don't need to have the 1 on it. There's your answer. All that simplifies to 1/x. Next problem. Number 7. I want to simplify this. So, it seems like, what do I do with this? Well, I could change it to a radical like this, but I don't want to. What I want to think about is 27. I want to go to some power. 27 is something cubed, squared, something like that. And a lot of times the trick is look at the denominator. Since that's a cubed, that probably means that what's inside of here might be something cubed. So hopefully you realize that 27 is 3 cubed. It might be hard to see, but there you go. So 27 is 3 cubed. Now, like we talked earlier, power to a power, we're multiplying. So 3 times negative 2/3 is going to be 3 to the negative 6/3, which is 3 to the negative second. Now, 3 to the negative second doesn't make much sense unless you know negative powers, because remember negative powers tell you to drop to the bottom. So that becomes 1/3 squared, and 3 squared, again, is, we forget that sometimes, 3 squared is 9, so this is just 1/9. So the value of this is 1/9. Again, you first need to look here to get it to be some power, preferably that power, the denominator's power. And so you got 3 cubed is 27. Multiply the powers, and negative powers drop, and then square it or whatever that needs to be done. For this last problem, we're going to simplify this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify the tops first and then the bottoms. So, if I'm going to simplify the tops, the first thing I got to realize is I want to change it all to fractional powers. So I have x to the 5/3, that's given, times x to the, hopefully you realize this is 1/3 power, because it's a cube root and the inside has no power, so that's a 1. And then the bottom you have x to the negative 3/2 times the square root of x, hopefully you know by now, is x to the 1/2. Because there's really a 2 hiding right there. And there's a 1 here, there's a 1 there. So okay, we got this on the bottom and this right here. Now we got to simplify the tops and simplify the bottoms. Hopefully you remember when you multiply you add powers. So what I now have is 3/5 plus 1/3. What you get is 6/3, which is x squared. And on the bottom you have negative 3/2 plus 1/2 would give you x to the negative first. Alright, so again, 5/3 plus 1/3 is 2, because it's 6/3. Negative 3/2 plus 1/2 is negative 2/2, which is negative 1. Now, can you simplify this? Well, you can subtract the powers. So hopefully you see this is going to be x to the 2 minus negative 1, which is x to the 3rd. And we have just simplified this ugliness using all your properties.